one of the greatest forms of resistance is also finding a way to kind of continue rising to the occasion and seeing what's still within your power and leveraging your influence. And that's a lot of my work is still, grieving the limitations, but also still coming back to what can we still do?
That was psychologist Dr. Ryan DeLapp, the director of the Racial, Ethnic, and Cultural Healing Program at the Ross Center. And this is Epicenter NYC. We connect our communities to news, information, and each other. I'm your host, Amber Castillo. When the world feels overwhelming, whether it's due to the constant stream of bad news, policies that target marginalized communities, or the weight of everyday stress, how do we stay grounded? How do we protect our peace without disengaging? And more importantly, how do we turn that stress into something empowering? Today, we're tackling these questions with someone who spent his career helping people navigate racial, ethnic, and cultural stress. Dr. Ryan DeLapp is a staff psychologist and the director of the Racial, Ethnic, and Cultural Healing Program, known as REACH, at the Ross Center, with offices in DC, Virginia, and New York. He's also the author of Empower Yourself Against Racial and Cultural Stress, a book designed to help young people, and really all of us, build resilience and find agency in the face of adversity. In our conversation, Dr. DeLapp shares practical strategies for managing anxiety, identifying personal strengths, and staying connected to our communities, even in challenging times. Before we jump in, a quick message from our team.
Hi, I'm Mariana from the Epicenter NYC team, and I have an important health question. Have you experienced unexpected brain fog, fatigue, or mood changes? These may be symptoms of long COVID. Most people who have COVID-19 completely recover, but some have lasting symptoms and health problems. If you need more information about what this means, we can help. Long COVID is real. You can stay protected by keeping up to date with your vaccines. Don't let COVID derail your health. Schedule your appointment today. Send us a note at hello@epicenter-nyc.com or call or text us at 917-818-2690.
Now back to the show. Here's my conversation with Dr. DeLapp.
I'm Dr. Ryan DeLapp. I am a staff psychologist and the director of the Racial, Ethnic, and Cultural Healing Program, or REACH, at the Ross Center, which has offices in Washington, D.C., Virginia, and New York. And I'm also the author of Empower Yourself Against Racial and Cultural Stress.
Great. And could you speak about some of the work you do at the center?
Absolutely. So I am a individual therapist where I do evidence-based interventions like CBT and acceptance and commitment therapy for individuals who are struggling with anxiety, depression, and other kind of emotional struggles. And then I particularly specialize in supporting folks who are struggling with racial and cultural stresses or any experience where they feel like they have been mistreated or been negatively judged because of their background, particularly their racial and ethnic background.
Yeah, could you speak about how you got into this field and why you gravitated towards anxiety and some of these disorders?
I've always been someone who's been interested in the human services field. I come from a family of social workers, and I also, my first job was as a camp counselor way back when. And I always knew that I wanted to have a role in supporting young people, children, all the way up to young adults, and now even adults as well. I actually learned that I wanted to do work related to health disparities when I learned, interestingly enough, about the disparities in early diagnosis and early intervention for individuals with autism. But then I decided I wanted to kind of branch out beyond that and just learn how to support people and help people to have access to resources that really are designed to respect them and their cultural backgrounds. And that's really what I've had the opportunity to be doing for the past about 10 to 15 years now.
Would you say there's one insight that really, sticks in your mind or that keeps coming up and up again, especially when you're working with people of color, who are experiencing stressors due to their race and ethnicity?
One of the main things is it's not a one size fits all approach. I mean, we are unique individuals, and even though we maybe share qualities in terms of similar background, similar skin color, or cultural experiences, we each have our own way of processing this stress. And I think it's important in my work and for other clinicians not to make assumptions about I know exactly how you're doing. I know exactly how you're struggling. I know exactly what you need. And more so being a better listener than somebody who's just jumping in with solutions. And I found that has been a really fruitful way of approaching this topic.
Just given your expertise working with folks of marginalized communities, like you said, right, it's obviously on an individual basis. Are there certain common mental health challenges, though, that maybe in general are coming up for folks that you work with during this time, especially when we have certain policies that might be targeting or might be disproportionately impacting people of color, people who are LGBTQ plus, yeah, and other folks with these lived experiences?
Yes, I think naturally when you feel like you're under attack or under threat, or your sense of safety and security and the needs that you feel that are should be rights, but those needs are being jeopardized, it's natural to feel anxious, to feel worried, to feel as if you're unsure kind of where to be able to access these things. And that can create a number of manifestations of anxiety, whether that's physical anxiety, where your body feels overwhelmed, you're always tense, you feel like you're on edge, you feel even possibly anxiety that manifests as irritability or frustration, or finding that it's just really hard to kind of find peace and relaxation. And then also when you're in these types of spaces, it takes a toll in the sense of maybe sometimes feeling sad or hopeless or even powerless, because, some of the things that maybe previously you could have leaned on for support are being taken away by the leaders at B. And that can be really disheartening for sure.
For anyone who maybe hasn't been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder or just had the experience of being treated for an anxiety or depressive disorder, are there certain signs they should look for and reflect on whether they need more of that mental health support?
In my work, a part of the early stages of therapy for folks who are may not even have a diagnosis is teaching them how to listen to themselves, listen to their bodies, listen to their emotions. And I teach a acronym called BEAT, like the beat of a song, right? And the B stands for body sensations, the E stands for emotions, the A stands for your actions and the urges that you have that can lead to actions, and your thoughts. And I just encourage people to take more beats. Take a beat and pause and look internal and try to notice, how you feel in your body, whether that's your heart rate, your breathing, your muscles. Do they feel heavy? Do they feel tense? Do they feel light? Noticing when in your day that body sensation changes can be good information. I also find that I don't care how old you are, it's really important to label your emotions. Take some time and really think to yourself, what do I feel? And if you have a hard time kind of having a sense of how to understand that or how to describe that to yourself, go online, Google emotion wheels, look at the different types of emotions you can have and just learn about that part of yourself. And then the other piece is learning your tendencies. There are some people when they are overwhelmed, they find themselves cleaning, or other people, they find themselves looking online, or they seek distractions, or maybe there are other things that you find yourself doing when you just don't feel that well or you feel stressed. And just paying attention to that is really important. And the last, and the T, is just also paying attention to how your thought processes change. If you notice that you're thinking way into the future about what ifs, or if you're thinking way into the past about what happens, that type of those thought processes can make it really hard to find relaxation in the moment. And so also listening to whether that is happening for you can be really important, and let you know when it might be helpful to take a pause and look for some ways to cope and relax.
I know we're going through a bit of an isolation issue in the US. Are there tips you would give to folks who might feel like they're not really a part of that community, or maybe they've lost touch with folks who used to be part of that network, to kind of regain that, or to find new sources for that?
In the book, that the Empower Yourself Against Racial and Cultural Stress, I talk about the skill called filling your wellness buckets. And the wellness buckets really are these different efforts you can make in your day-to-day life to kind of promote certain routines that can build you up. So the first bucket really is that physical wellness. The second one, as I just talked about, is social connection. And social connection is really, it doesn't have to be in-person hangouts. It can be who you text, or maybe setting up a video call, or, when is the last time that you really asked somebody how they're doing or how they're feeling, but also yourself kept it real instead of saying, oh, I'm good, but being like, man, I'm really struggling. When is the last time that you've kind of been real with the people around you that kind of give you that safe space? The third bucket is really all about fun and enjoyment. And yes, it may be hard and feel challenging to create opportunities for joy, but really thinking to yourself, like, how can I still just make an effort? When is the last time that you kind of opened a book or try to do something that has previously made you feel happy or crack a smile, but just kind of continuing to make those efforts? And then last, as the world kind of feels like it's on fire, how are you still trying to progress and doing things that help you to feel like you're accomplishing something, even if that is something as small as folding your laundry or something as significant as finding a way to use your voice to fight against and resist some of the things that are happening in the world. But what is some things that you can do to give yourself a chance to feel like you've accomplished something in your day to day?
Yeah. And especially in that last bucket, I heard the idea of identifying and leveraging your strengths, right? Like, as you put it, like something that can make you feel accomplished. Yeah. Are there any strategies for kind of identifying and leveraging what some of those strengths are for this moment?
Oh, well, I find the word strengths very interesting because I think we have to actually talk about what that word means, right? So sometimes when we think about strengths, we think about something that's supernatural, right? We have to have an amazing voice or be like the best like public speaker or be somebody who can have a world-class skill set. And I think strengths is something that's a lot more kind of everyday. It's any ability that you have to take a meaningful step towards a goal. And it's also the resources that your community offers. And so I think taking some time and thinking about like, what are some of the character traits or the abilities, whether that's, whether that's humor or being a community organizer or being somebody who's strategic or good with money or somebody who's good with numbers. What are the things that just kind of comes natural to you that you can utilize for the betterment of something, bigger than yourself? And then how can you find a way to join a community and offer that ability to kind of join whatever the fight is? And then the other piece is like looking at the resources within your community. Sometimes we feel like we may have to reinvent the wheel. But sometimes there are other people who are like-minded, but who have different strengths than you do, and finding ways to kind of come together, network, and learn what those resources are that are out there for you to participate in can also help you to channel whether that's that rage, that anxiety, that sadness into something that feels meaningful is I think another way to do that as well.
Especially now when, again, there might not be the same kinds of supports or maybe formal supports in terms of funding for, diversity and equity programs. Are there certain strategies for walking through like, or prioritizing, maybe like making sure that you're safe first and, people around you are safe before kind of taking some of these other steps towards social actions? Is there a way that you would help someone prioritize that?
There are different types of costs that we should consider or consequences from these efforts. And one is social costs, right? So social costs, as I define it, is the ways in which our efforts to have our voices heard or pursue change can result in whether it's defensiveness or social isolation or some sort of confrontation with, someone else. And for some individuals, like that can be really hurtful and lead to kind of hurtful outcomes as well. So it's really thinking about kind of what might be the reception of these efforts. And then how can I also be thoughtful about either surrounding myself in community when I make these efforts or having someone afterwards, knowing like a community I can go back to if that social isolation exists. The second one is resource costs. Sometimes when we want to push for this social change, sometimes it can result in the denial or the removal of some sort of kind of resource. So if I try to stand up at work and I try to make my voice known, is that going to result in the loss of my job, the loss of financial stability? Those are things that may be important to consider, as I'm trying to strategize my next steps. I think the other one that's really important is safety, right? There's a lot of folks who may feel threatened by people trying to kind of jockey for their own like equitable place in the world, and may result in physical harm. And unfortunately, that's a conversation we have to have is like, if you use your voice, are you still going to be physically safe? And that's crazy to even consider, but that's actual the reality for some folks. And the last one is the emotional burden that can come from that. Just continuing to have to shoulder the responsibility either by yourself or in your community of being that squeaky wheel within a system. And sometimes it's important to also think about that emotional consequence so that you can take care of yourself. You can go back and listen to your beat after you do that and make sure you're leaning into some of those emotional wellness activities and strategies so that you can heal from the efforts of trying to fight for the change that you want to see.
What are the most common misconceptions you get about racial or cultural struggles that folks go through?
I mean, I think one of the things that I try to talk about a bit in the book, and also, and it comes from my work with folks, is this sense that just because you've experienced racial and cultural stresses, or you're well aware of the experience of racism in the world, or the different ways in which people are mistreated, that knowledge protects you from being affected. I hear people, say things like, I don't understand why this is getting under my skin. I should be tougher than this. I should be stronger than this. Or seeing that these moments where they're anxious or worried or angry or just impacted in any way is a sign of weakness. And one of my core elements in the book is and in my work is trying to help people to reframe that as like that's a part of your humanity, right? It's not normal to have to feel slighted. It's not just to feel like you don't know where your next meal, or whether you're going to be protected, or whether you can walk down the street and not have your whole life changed, right? That's when you walk in very threatening and uncomfortable spaces, that has a way of getting into your body and affecting you. And I think it's a hard reality to wrap your mind around for some, but it's really important, because when you're able to acknowledge that that's a part of your humanity, it allows you to actually be responsive in ways that are kind and compassionate, but then also it helps you to get what you need. It helps you to get the support you need, or at least give yourself a chance to get that support. And so one of the misconceptions is just this sense of knowing that it exists means that you're going to be immune. And that's unfortunately not the case.
Yeah. And are there specific strategies for reducing overwhelm without keeping your head down with everything that's happening? Is there a way that you help them balance that?
I mean, there's a core kind of like thought process I think about is balancing the I can and the I can't right now. And I think there are ways in which sometimes we can get really polarized in either way. And one way is like when a lot of negative things are happening, we can be really focused on like, these are all the limitations on my day. These are all the limitations on what I'm possibly able to do with my time, my efforts. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. And we've talked about ways to even notice how that's taking its toll on you emotionally. But one of the greatest forms of resistance is also finding a way to kind of continue rising to the occasion and seeing what's still within your power and leveraging your influence. And that's a lot of my work is still, grieving the limitations, but also still coming back to like, what can we still do? Whether that's how you take care of yourself and your emotions, or whether that's how you continue to, make your voice heard in some capacity, or even how you continue to make sure you're staying connected and grounded in what you love about yourself. All of those things are still things that can be within our control, even in the midst of these like limitations, both systemically, interpersonally, and so forth. And so, but finding that balance is one that can be hard, and yet it can be very freeing when you are able to find moments where you can find that balance.
And could you speak a little bit about your book and what inspired it and a little bit about what it's about?
Yeah, so the book was inspired back in 2020 whenever I was working in the Bronx, New York, and I was working with some youth who were really wanting to talk about some of the things that were happening in the world, like, the unfortunate events of, murders of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and George Floyd. And I noticed that I wanted, as a clinician, to be responsive to the specific things they wanted to talk about. But I noticed that not every kid wanted to talk about the same things, or wanted to talk about it for as long as others did. And so I wanted to create a resource that allowed me and other clinicians to be flexible, to be able to say, like, what is it specifically that you're saying that you're impacted by in terms of these events? And how can we be specific in terms of offering you the support that you're looking for? And that inspired this like journey from 2020 until now, in terms of finding ways to help youth understand how they're impacted. And then also the book now offers them like a choose your own path through the book of exactly what do you need in this moment. And then you can come back to the book whenever you need to, whenever that happens.
Great. Are there any other key takeaways you hope readers will get from your book?
The other piece is community building, right? I think that in this book, it's like more of a conversation starter. I by no means feel like I'm the end all be all kind of knowledgeable person about all resources that kind of help people to navigate the racial and cultural stresses in their lives. But I do hope that the book allows folks to start conversations with people within their communities, possibly elders or adults or, folks who kind of have walked this walk in some way, as well as peers and others around them, and be able to sit down and keep it real about how the world is affecting them, but then also have healing and empowering conversations about how we can kind of move forward together. And so the book features conversation starters throughout, reflection questions that I use within groups that I run at in the Reach program, but then also I've seen used in like book clubs or in other community spaces to kind of really encourage people to like really have these sensitive yet very important conversations.
Got it. And if folks do need more support or want to reach you or someone else at the Ross Center, how can they reach you?
So, yeah, the Ross Center is again located in Washington, D.C., Virginia, and New York. We offer support for many different types of mental health concerns, but the REACH program itself is offered to folks across these areas, and they can go to our website and I kind of submit an inquiry about kind of wanting to either work with myself or work with one of our clinicians. And we'd be happy to set up a call. We usually do 15-minute free consultation calls to be able to speak and hear exactly how you're looking for support. And then we go from there. The REACH program also is intending to support professionals like community leaders. If you're a school official or if you are someone who works at a community center and you want to be able to create culturally healing conversations or a space for such healing to happen in your community, I partner with folks all the time to be able to create like a curate that type of discussion in ways that lead people or kind of incorporate some of the concepts that I've talked about today, and hopefully helping people to come together and heal together as well.
Great. And where and when can they look for your book?
So my book is currently available as an ebook right now, but if you want a physical hard copy, that'll be out on March 27th. So not too long.
Great. And congrats on your book.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for the time to speak on this very important topic. And thank you for shedding light on its importance as well.
If you want to learn more, be sure to check out Dr. DeLapp's book, Empower Yourself Against Racial and Cultural Stress, available now as an ebook and coming in print on March 27th. And if today's episode resonated with you, share it with a friend. We'd also love to hear from you. Leave us a review or reach out to us at hello@epicenter-nyc.com. And if you're looking for mental health support, you can learn more about the REACH program at the Ross Center by visiting their website, rosscenter.com. That's all for today. Thanks for listening and thanks for supporting us as we do our best to support our community. We couldn't do it without you. For more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at epicenter-nyc.com. Our intro music is All the Pretty Horses by Karavika. You can find more of their music on their website, linked to or in our podcast description.